Mario Kart 9. It's finally real, and I'm here hoping the game has a weird gimmick. Mario Kart Double Dash had 2 races per kart and special items. Wii had motion controls and bikes, 7 had glider and underwater sections, and 8 had anti-gravity. But what could be the gimmick in Mario Kart 9? That's what we'll be discussing in this video. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my long neglected Mario Kart 9 mini-series, which I haven't updated in nearly 3 years. If this is the sort of content you enjoy, please consider subscribing so you don't miss any more content like this from myself in the future. And with that, let's get into it. Okay, let's tackle the elephant in the room. And yes, I mean this one. A concept often thrown about within modern Mario Kart discussion is the possibility of the inclusion of the Wonder Flower from Super Mario Bros. Wonder. And personally, I am a little doubtful we'll see the Wonder Flower in Mario Kart 9. Mario Kart 9 has likely been in some sort of development since 2016 and simply got delayed into oblivion after the magnum success of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on Switch. So I feel it's unlikely that it would contain such a drastic mechanic from such a recent Mario game. But maybe they could have added the Wonder Flower later in development. Let's say that for the sake of this concept they did, and the Wonder Flower is here. I believe that when activated it could affect all players and alter the track itself and introduce new shortcuts, obstacles, enemies, and visuals. It could cause the entire track to suddenly become wobbly, allowing you to trick off the regular ground like in certain Rainbow Road tracks. It could cause new enemies and obstacles like thwomps, charge and chucks, or rhinos to suddenly appear and cause chaos on the track, or the flower could cause all races to change dramatically, for example becoming unusually large or small, or causing everyone to change positions in the race. Would the Wonder Flower be an item that could be gained from item boxes, or would it appear randomly on the stage for someone to pick up? I'm not sure, but the Wonder Flower feels like it was handcrafted for Mario Kart. Will it be in the game? I'm also not sure. We'll have to wait and see. Another gimmick that the game could potentially feature is one I briefly touched on in this year's predictions video, and this is what I coined the Dash and Past mechanic. A mechanic which would use an item, perhaps some sort of flower or clock, to magically change the game's art style to resemble that of a previous Mario Kart game, and also change the track and the obstacles present in the track to add another layer of chaos into the game. This could also make sense because the character designs in the game seem to be paying homage to those of older games. Mario looks like his Mario Kart 64 version in a few ways, Peach is driving in her dress, and Donkey Kong has gone back to his pre-Rare days, perhaps teasing something like this nostalgia-based gimmick for the game. Another spin on this idea could be that the item causes the track to suddenly change into a completely different track in the game, similar to Stage Morph in Smash Ultimate. I think something like this would add a lovely sprinkling of chaos into the game, even if just as an extra mode or option rather than the game's main draw. Another new gimmick could be that the game has a semi-open world story mode. Wait, don't click away. Just hear me out. Imagine you're tasked with driving around the world of the game, exploring and discovering new race courses to add new tracks and cups to the game's Grand Prix mode. Imagine you can go around helping various characters with quests and partaking in races or stunt runs where you have to do loads of tricks to rack up a high score. I'm not quite sure how they'd get this to work seamlessly, but the hugely open area with loads of branching paths at the end of the initial teaser has me convinced that this isn't an impossibility. Imagine Burnout Paradise, but Mario Kart. We've been asking for a story or mission mode for ages. This could finally be the time. Maybe. Gosh, I hope so. If they were to take a similar route to the glider and underwater gimmicks of Mario Kart 7 and the anti-gravity gimmick of Mario Kart 8, what could be the next step in that direction? Perhaps underground racing, water racing, ski racing, or racing in space. Underground racing could consist of sections where the track suddenly dives underground into a hole, and everyone's karts activate lights and drills on the front, and you have to navigate through sections which are a bit darker and there's falling rocks and stalactites. Or perhaps in certain sections of track, there's pieces of wall which can be drilled through to make new shortcuts using a drill item. Perhaps meaning you can take the shortcut, but in doing so you open it up for everyone else too. Water racing could mean that everyone's karts turn into boats and you race on top of the water rather than under it. Perhaps when you go onto the water on some tracks, there will be an option to race on top or below, both consisting of different shortcuts, obstacles, and perhaps different item box layouts. Underwater sections could be slower but offer more boost pads and item boxes, for example, but for those less concerned about items could take the slightly faster but more tricky to control above water route. Ski racing sections could have everyone's vehicles sprouting skis out of the bottom, like Rosalina's have in the teaser trailer. And then, players have to race down a particularly steep section of track, before going off of a jump and being presented with a quick time event where, if you press the correct buttons, you do a more elaborate trick and gain a greater boost when you land back on the track. Space sections could perhaps be where players take a warp star up to the stratosphere and they have to navigate through a flying section of the course, once again full of floating obstacles. Perhaps you have a limited amount of boost that you can use to fly to the end of the section before returning to the course below, and depending on how far you fly in space, the further you'll travel forward in the actual race when you return back to the track. A new gimmick like this would be a logical next step, but somehow I feel this isn't what's going to happen. I think Nintendo is happy keeping it relatively simple with their 4 established racing modes of road, air, underwater, and anti-gravity. We can assume these will return. I mean, anti-gravity is being implied by this ridiculously steep-looking mountain section here in the trailer, but I am merely speculating. Speaking of speculation, the new gimmick could have something to do with this glowing takeaway food bag under Yoshi's Burger Place, which everyone is talking about. Perhaps in each track of the game there will be some sort of food place that you can pick up a bag of food from. Perhaps the food bag will grant the player who picks it up access to their special item, like all of the characters in Double Dash had. Or perhaps it gives the person who nabs it an extra speed boost on boost pads, like we see Mario in the trailer here. He receives the boost from the boost pad, but he has an aura around him as his cart lifts up. This doesn't happen to the other races. Or maybe the cart lifting up just happens if you shake your controller, similar to when you trick off of a ramp. Maybe there will be an energy gauge that fills up when you collect the food bag, and each time you go over a boost pad or trick ramp, you get an extra boost and the gauge decreases. Or you can use up the gauge to freely boost like Sonic does in his boost formula games. I feel the latter option is the most likely. Either way, this bag is certainly important, since they included it in the first teaser trailer, but I suppose we'll have to wait and see what it does. Another idea for a gimmick that I have is one that I always thought would end up in Splatoon, but due to the fact that we have confirmation that there will be 24-player races in the game due to 24 starting lines being present, I believe we could see some sort of Battle Royale mode. Perhaps everyone's racing, but everyone has a limited amount of lives and therefore a limited amount of times they can get hit, like in Balloon Battle. Once you lose your lives, you're out. But to keep it interesting, players who go out arm Koopa shell cannons on the outside of the track and fire at racers who are still in. But this would very much still be a racing mode rather than a battle mode, as each time a lap is completed, you get 5 more lives added to your count and a boost to your max speed stat. There would also be items which give you armor, invincibility, or greater offensive capabilities. And you'd play until the last player is standing, or until sudden death activates at the end of a timer, at which point everyone goes back to the start, and the next player to cross the finish line wins. I think a mode like this would be super chaotic fun, and very much like Nintendo. Or the 24 start lines could just mean that 24 players is our big new gimmick? I suppose we'll have to wait and see. But what do you think Mario Kart 9's big gimmick is going to be? Let me know down in those comments and subscribe so you don't miss any more content like this from myself in the future. And with that, thank you very much for watching, stay safe out there, and I shall see you all in the next one.